NBA Draft Combine on ESPNU and ESPN2. 5 hours of coverage both days. Watch these future NBA stars showcase their skills on the hard court and shooting, agility test, and scrimmages. The NBA Draft Combine Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern on ESPNU and 1 p.m. on ESPN2. Also live on Watch ESPN. We've watched the point guards, the start of today's coverage, also the shooting guards. We're looking at the small forwards now, and someone that at one point was projected a little bit higher in the draft, Chad. That's Glenn Robinson III out of Michigan. Small forward, has the size for it, but did scouts see enough to really trust him as a first-round pick?
No. They didn't. They expected big progress from his freshman to his sophomore year. They wanted to see him evolve his perimeter game. He's an elite athlete. And in fact, he may come in here and test as the best leaper of anybody here. His agent's saying that he's going to show off a 45-inch vertical when we get to the testing tomorrow. That's really impressive. That'll be right up there. I think DJ Stevens did it last year at 45.5. But he's got to be more than an athlete in the NBA. You got to have something else that you do at the next level, and I'm not sure that he showed that to us at Michigan last year. And you look at his height, he measured well. He measured almost 6'9" in shoes, and he's got a 6'10" wingspan. But his standing reach, which is the big thing for a power forward, was only 8'4", which is really low, right? And so that's the thing that I think is going to concern teams as they get to the next level. That standing reach is really, really small for a player his size. He's got to be a 3 in the league, but he doesn't have the game of a 3.
You know what, Chad? It's interesting, Fran. 2 years ago, when you're looking at Michigan play, okay? Trey Burke, your point guard. Tim Hardaway Jr., your 2. Glenn Robinson, the 3. Mitch McGarry, your 5. And that's a loaded team. That's a team that gets to the title game and loses, okay? People are projecting him to be the top 5 pick. As soon as you say, I'm coming back to school next year, all of a sudden those 9, 10 points that you were averaging with all these other players, and people were projecting you to be this great pick, all of a sudden it's like James Michael McAdoo 3 years ago. Now we expect you to come back in and be a dominant force, to average around 20 points, right? To really take your game to the next level. And Glenn Robinson had a hard time finding that rhythm offensively this year and seemed at times to be non-existent on the court, Fran.
You're preaching to the choir. This kid, until his senior year in high school, was really not even on the radar, okay? He comes into college. He has a better than average freshman year in terms of nobody really knowing him. And then he gets overrated, okay? No, he never had lottery type ability. Now he's underrated, okay? Because he played in a system where the coach did a really good job of spreading the offense around. He was their alpha dog in terms of day-to-day practice. He may go 28, he may go 32. You know what? I like this kid better today than I did when he was a freshman, when people had him in a lottery, because he had no business with his ability ever being a lottery type guy. I like him.
Where you got him, Chad? Where you got him?
Bubble first rounder.
Yeah.
And he'll be in a playoff team. And 5 years from now, he'll be a good NBA player, not a great one.
Last year, we started doing some of the international stuff, Fran. Giannis Antetokounmpo ended up going to the middle of the first round of Milwaukee Bucks. Here's a storyline for you. His older brother, Thanasis Antetokounmpo, who actually played in the D-League with Delaware, he's also a small forward. My first question, if it was Thanasis Jones, would he be at the Combine? Would we be talking about him?
Yes, he would, because quite frankly, let's face it, the Greek freak, Chad, where would the Greek freak, Giannis, be drafted if we redid the draft a year ago?
Number 1.
Okay.
Come on.
Last year.
Top 5.
Yeah.
Top 5.
Top
3. Top 3.
Top 3.
I mean, we do know that he didn't really do a lot on one of the worst teams in the league, right? Like
He would be the number 1 pick.
Okay. All right. Well, listen. Okay, I say top 3, but
Okay, all right, fine.
now
Who do you want? Anthony Bennett? Do you want who?
Alex
you want?
Len, man, that guy should.
You want Alex Len? Yeah, that was your guy last year.
No,
I'll
okay,
just host over here. Never mind.
Listen, let's just knock you down a little.
No, he's an NBA expert. Don't let him kind of get out of this thing with the host.
Listen, let's get real. He's the older brother of Giannis.
Right.
Okay, he's actually a better athlete. He's a better athlete, but he doesn't have the feel for the game his younger brother did. And you know what? In the D-League, he actually became a good player. His numbers offensively went up in the last 2 months of the season. He's an outstanding defender, and I think that's where he's going to hang his hat. I guarantee you between 30 and 45, he's a great value because he's got long-term potential as a wing defender, Tom.
I like it.
A wing defender.
Lock him up. I like it.
Utah Jazz have been stockpiling picks out of the lottery, and they'll have another one this year. Their general manager, Dennis Lindsay, with Andy Katz.
All right, thank you, Ryan. And so, yes, you have a lottery pick, number 23, and a second-round pick around 35. This is a draft. What do you need to get out of the lottery?
You know, we'll be busy, Andy, relative to if we don't move 4. We have 23, as you mentioned, and 35. And look, those picks we may or may not select. We're going to look to add to our group, and if it's a veteran guy, so be it. If it's a highly talented young player who's 19 at 4, then we'll be glad with that as well. But we think we have a couple chips to play the game.
Certainly, compared to a year ago, the anticipation for the lottery is a little bit more heightened. So how anxious are you to find out where you're going to land on Tuesday night?
You know, very anxious. As we all know, you know, the lottery balls are an important part of the process, and you hope for good luck. And the nice thing is with this draft, if we stay where we're at or move back slightly, we think that we'll be very covered from a talent-based standpoint.
What is maybe the most pressing on the court need, though, for this team to make that transition in the rebuilding process to start to climb up?
Look, you know, we have multiple needs: experience, shooting. We have a good young core. We have a young player at each position. So whatever we draft potentially is going to be coming behind a good young player. So that's the neat thing about our process, is there's so many directions that we can go. And I think we have a good story to tell relative to the players that we're selecting at the, you know, potentially at multiple spots. And you know, it's Jazz history that young players have to wait their turn. You know the story about John Stockton having to wait his turn, Derek Favors, Gordon Hayward, Alec Burks. So we think we'll add a good young piece if we do select it. And, you know, maybe it's a veteran, you know, via trade.
You mentioned John Stockton. What are the chances that he could be the next head coach of the Jazz?
We'll have no comment on the coaching search and selection.
Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you.
Couldn't get out of him there. Let's go back to you guys.
That was just a flat denial. Like, hey, I'm not telling you. So that actually saves us a lot of time. If you look at the projected likelihood of where you're finishing the lottery, doesn't play out that way. Rarely does the team with the best chance of getting number 1 pick actually end up with the number 1 pick. And of course, Milwaukee sitting on top of there. Utah right there with Boston in that 4th, possibly 5th selection. And one of the selections that could be in the late lottery, maybe late teens, maybe early 20s. Rodney Hood of Duke out there working with the small forwards. We're also going to hear from some more general managers as we continue our coverage live from Chicago, the NBA Combine on ESPN2.
Feeds it down to Randall, gathers and dunks.
How about Julius Randle? Comes out aggressive.
Out it for Julius Randall.
Randall puts it up and in. The freshman from Dallas, lighting a fire for Kentucky.
The 2014 NBA Draft Combine here at the Quest Multisport on the west side of Chicago. For our coverage here on ESPN2, you just saw Julius Randle with authority slamming down a couple of buckets for the Kentucky Wildcats. Kentucky finishing second to the UConn Huskies in the national title game. So you were a true old traditional post player. We don't find that anymore. Why do you love just getting down and dirty in the post and scoring in that manner?
It's definitely one of my strengths, you know, using my strength, my power, establishing a good position, and you know, getting easier buckets.
What's the key to doing that, do you think, at the next level and being able to use your physical presence?
Just keep making my game more diverse, you know, having more counters, post moves, being able, you know, keep developing my right hand, and you know, just a good post position as well.
What are the chances that you're actually going to feel a little bit freer in the NBA because you were doubled and triple teamed so much in college?
I think there'll be a good chance, you know, especially, you know, with, like I said before, the NBA has that 3-second rule in the paint, so if teams are going to load up, you know, it'll be easier kicks and, you know, guys will be wide open. So I know the biggest thing, and Coach Cal was telling me that the spacing in the NBA and the teams are saying it'll be a lot easier for me, so I definitely look forward to that.
You mentioned Coach John Calipari of Kentucky. Kentucky's had a tremendous run lately of NBA-level draft picks coming through there. What is it about the program and the way this team has played that has provided that path to the NBA?
You know, Coach Cal's just going to have your back. At the end of the day, he's going to do what's best for you. He's going to be put you in positions for you to be able to shine, and you know, that's what he did for me. And you know, I was fortunate enough to be able to leave after a year.
The lottery is Tuesday night. Still wide open to see who's going to be that #1 pick. Make your case. Why should you be the #1 pick?
You know, I'm going to give 110% all the time. I think in the NBA, I'll show, you know, a lot more of my game, you know, post, you know, stepping out on the floor, being a diverse threat. And I think, you know, my potential is unlimited. You know, I can still be a great defensive player. I have a lot to learn on that end, but I can end up being a two-way player eventually.
Thank you, Julius.
Thank you.
All right, Ryan, Julius Randle's made his case. Let's see if Jay Will can back that up.
At least 15 points per game, 10 boards as a freshman in just a one-and-done effort, and we've seen some awesome players come through. Durant, of course, Love, Michael Beasley. I mean, the guy, remember there was a debate back then whether or not you should go Beasley or Derrick Rose, #1 overall in that 2008 draft. We are back here at the desk inside the gym in Chicago for day 1 of the NBA Combine with Chad Ford, Tom Penn, Fran Fraschilla, Jay Williams. I'm Ryan Russillo. So when you look at Julius, he was somebody we thought at the beginning of the year could be in play for that #1 overall pick. What did he do in his freshman season to still be considered one of the top talents in this draft?
Well, 6'9", 248, he has an understanding of how to utilize his body. And we're going to have a series of plays right here. Here's first off, look at him provide a target to give an interior post pass. He's going against Adrian Payne, who's obviously taller, but a quick spin move. He's able to get to his right hand. But look right there, utilizing a head fake to get the bigger players up in the air, creates contact. Going against a guy like Isaiah Austin, who's 7'1" with a 7'4" wingspan, providing post position. But look how he creates contact with Isaiah, kind of shielding him off, taking him out of the picture defensively. And then a quick move here on the block, catches the ball, realizing that he can, his go-to move, which is a spin move, okay? He's going to turn face, and he's going to find a way to get back to his left hand. One dribble with his right hand, a spin move back to the middle of the paint. Fran, this is his favorite move. We've seen him do it a multitude of times. He finds a way to get back to his left hand. But also what I like about him is that his first comment was, I have to continue to develop my right hand. It's been a rarity this year that we've seen him finish at the rim with his right hand. That will be something that scouts will continue to look for him to improve at.
Yeah, I've been watching this guy for a long time. I mean, like since 5th grade.
He's a Texas kid, right?
Yeah, and you know what I love about him, and this has been true this year as a freshman, he always plays hard. The kid is a beast. He's got fast feet, and he plays hard. Now, you start with that baseline, and then you go from there, because there's a lot he can improve on, guys. And, you know, you take a look right here, just him attacking the rim now. There's things about his game that have to be cleaned up as far as being able to score over length. He was 10 of 31 this year against a pro front line at LSU, and he had some trouble against Baylor in this game, a game they lost. But I like him, guys, because he plays hard. He's got a high motor. And by the way, he's one of the youngest players in this draft. He won't turn 20 until, I think, November, and that bodes well for him.
All those technical things can and will be cleaned up, especially if you bring it. If you bring it day in and day out in practice, if you bring it. And he brings it, right? Fran alluded to this incredible energy that goes with this starting power forward build. So you got a starter. You're looking for a pillar of the franchise, Chad, right? When you're up top 5, you need a franchise pillar. He could be that.
I kind of want to know what's going on inside Chad's head right now, because Chad's thinking.
I think there's an interesting debate. I think we thought Randle might be the #2 pick in this draft after Wiggins. The way he played, he had a really, really good freshman season, as we saw. But there's teams that think Noah Vonleh might be the best power forward in this draft. There's teams that think Aaron Gordon out of Arizona might be the best power forward in this draft. They all bring different things to the table. But as a traditional back your man down and use your strength to score around the basket, Randle's that guy. But he does struggle to finish over length. I think that's a question mark. He was billed coming out of high school, having a pretty good perimeter game. Didn't really show that much at Kentucky this year. Vonleh can really stretch the floor. He's longer. And then Aaron Gordon, this freakish athlete who can defend and just brings this crazy. You think Randle has a lot of energy. Aaron Gordon brings this crazy energy. I think it's really interesting. Go to every single team, and they have those 3 guys in different orders right now about how they like their power forwards to play. No question, Randle goes somewhere between 4 and 7 in this draft.
So Randle looking in that slot, not what he hoped for probably at the beginning of the year, but who knows, he could actually end up with a much better organization going 4, 5, 6. Whatever ends up happening, we'll have that lottery for you coming up next Tuesday. So we're going to continue to watch the small forwards behind us. The power forwards and centers are actually going to be working together. And one of the small forwards now that we're going to focus in on a little bit more here after the break, C.J. Fair, 4 years up at Syracuse. We see his teammates, Jeremy Grant, Tyler Ennis. How does Fair stack up against the rest? That's next, live from Chicago, the NBA Combine. The NBA playoffs continue tonight on ESPN. First at 8, Paul George and Indiana Pacers face John Wall and the Wizards. And at 10:30, how about this? Kevin Durant and the Thunder battle Blake Griffin and the Clippers. It all starts with the key NBA Countdown at 7:30. Also live on the Watch ESPN app. NBA playoffs, Game 6, the conference semifinals tonight on ESPN. Also live on Watch ESPN. Day 1 underway, almost wrapping up 5 hours of coverage on ESPNU and ESPN2 of the NBA Combine. The small forwards working out behind us, and a 4-year guy out of Syracuse, CJ Fair, and really kind of taking a back seat a bit, Fran, to his teammates Tyler Ennis and Jeremy Grant as far as where they are as prospects, but we've seen Fair for a while now. What do you think?
Well, and again, it's that old story about a guy that's been around so long, we've picked him apart. The kid's had a really good career. I think he's caught between being a NBA power forward and an NBA small forward. Didn't shoot it well behind the arc this year. It was in the mid-20s. That's a factor. Kid's a winner. Going to get a chance to be in somebody's summer league. I got him, I think I've got him 45th on my list.
Fran's big board.
He's a tweener. You know, that's what he is. He's a tweener. Can he make a team? Of course he can, because he's had a prolific career. But I don't see a ton of upside in terms of being an NBA starter, at least in the near future, guys.
I'm with Fran. He doesn't scream NBA player other than the fact that he's a good athlete. He doesn't really shoot the ball. He doesn't have a position. He had a great senior season for Syracuse, and you want to like him because he's improved and he's worked on his game, and I just don't know how you project him at the next level, what he does.
The shooting numbers really dropped off. I mean, last year, 47%, started taking more threes this year. As you mentioned, Fran, 27%. I remember Gordon Hayward as somebody who Butler had like a bad shooting year, then a good shooting year, and you're trying to figure out who he was.
But he's got 4, and he has 3 of those were bad shooting years, and 1 was good.
You know what I would do if I were a guy like him, Jay, Tom, jump in there on this? I would tell CJ Fair, if I was his agent, listen, you're going to be in somebody's camp, and you just got to make yourself uncuttable. Whatever that is, energy, making mid-range shots, make yourself uncuttable, because I always told my guys that I coached, you're going to come down to the final roster spot, and you want the coaching staff and the GM to say, you know what, he's not a great NBA player, but we can't cut this kid. We're going to keep CJ Fair on our team. That's what he's got to do.
Throughout the course of the year, he's a really good mid-range jump shooter. But when you look at this Syracuse team and their makeup, they had one deep threat, and that was Trevor Cooney. And Trevor Cooney went invisible towards the end of the year. And I think that put an unbelievable amount of pressure on CJ Fair to try to do even more for his team than what he's supposed to do. So is CJ Fair going to be a star at the next level? I don't think so. Is he going to be a second-round pick? I think so. It's a guy that needs to get into camp, like you said, Fran, knock down the mid-range jump shot, be a guy that defends very hard, and be serviceable. And who knows, once you get your foot in the door, what could happen.
One of the other small forwards working out here out of Clemson is KJ McDaniels.
Most underrated guy.
Whoa.
One of the most underrated guys.
I agree with Jay.
One of the most underrated guys in this draft. He's been one of the most underrated guys this entire year. Lockdown defender, and a guy, Chad, that's improved his scoring ability immensely from last year.
And a crazy, crazy athlete. Just a crazy athlete. He's an inconsistent jump shooter, and that's going to be the question. And he's also a bit of a tweener, whether he's at 3 or 4. But he's improved so dramatically this year, his ability to score the basketball. And when you look at that athletic package that he brings to the table, I mean, elite NBA athlete, not just elite college athlete. He's a guy that I could see a team right after the lottery deciding to grab, and people will be like, who is this guy? And he could have a big impact in the NBA.
I'm sorry for cutting you off.
No, you didn't. I wanted to see that excitement.
The entire year of this kid and me doing ACC games, I watched him play with such a chip on his shoulder. And even to the point that he wants to prove that he belongs.
Yeah.
And his game has improved drastically from last year.
You know what screams out at me? He blocked one shot every 11 possessions up the floor, and he's only 6'6". He's a freak defender.
That's a great stat.
Right off the bat, you can stick him on the floor as, guess what, Tom? A wing defender.
Say it again. Look, later you go in the first round, you're into the playoff teams. How do the Clippers get a little bit better? How do the Portland Trailblazers get better? I mean, I'm talking about they don't have a pick, but I'm talking about the concept of the playoff team looking for a tweak. And if you can have that wing athlete who can come in there with energy. How many times do we say it? Energy, 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 and bounce. He is so springy and bouncy and lively and frankly exciting with that. So good on you, Jake, jumping all over that.
Flight 32 out of Clemson. That's what they would say on the broadcast. But Portland's actually a really good example, Tom. We see them eliminated last night against San Antonio. And as great as that young core is, as lucky as they were with the health, because basically all of their starters played, it's a team that clearly needs depth. So even though a lot of these good teams don't necessarily have opportunities for guys to get minutes, Portland's a good young team that you could get minutes if you fill a certain role.
We keep discounting these older guys, saying they're too old. Well, that factors in high in the draft, okay, where you're looking for a starter. When you're deeper into this draft, late first, you need multiple players. Maybe you just need the one specialist. You want that more mature guy who's ready to come in and give your team something. Back to Coach Thibodeau with the Bulls, sitting courtside right now, thinking, who can make me better? Rick Carlisle over there, sitting courtside with the Mavs. Who could I plug into my system that can help me right now? I remember standing at this camp a few years ago with Pat Riley, and Pat Riley was standing behind right where Tibbs is now. Looked at me and said, I'm the coach. Who can I play next week? And that was the list we talked about. That's the way coaches think. He right now is saying, who can help me get over the hump and get this team into the finals?
As we continue to watch the small forwards, as Coach Thibodeau, who that team has just done such a great job the last few years in the draft, looking at who knows where Tony Snell's going to be, but Jimmy Butler was the end of the first round. They've done well internationally, and they let free agents go, and sometimes the fan base here in Chicago will be like, what are we doing? We're not spending money. Well, at least you have a franchise that does a really good job replenishing that roster through the draft, especially late in the first round. Melvin Ejim, another one of those Iowa State guys. We saw DeAndre Kane Fran a little bit earlier. Yeah. Ejim is somebody, if you just watched, if you just showed up to a game and saw him as one of the 10 guys out there, you'd be shocked to think that he's not a first-round draft pick.
Well, you're right. He had, he's a senior. He played 4 years at Iowa State. What I like about him is he's a versatile guy. He can put it on the floor, get to the basket. He can make threes. As a junior, he led the Big 12 in rebounding. He's one of the very few players in the history of the league to lead the league in rebounding as a 6'6" guy and under. You know what I like about him? Much like a Jimmy Butler type, you're not sure what you're going to get when you draft him. You just know you're going to get maturity, you're going to get toughness, and he's going to, if he goes in the first round, which I'm not sure he will, it'll be a playoff team. If he goes in the second round, it's going to be a team that values the fact that he is a very mature, seasoned guy who will be a great role player and do what he's asked.
And you just wish he was 3 inches taller. I mean, this is a guy that had a 48-point game against TCU. He had a 30-point game against Kansas State. There's a lot of things to like about him as a player, but he's another guy that's stuck right now. Would you agree, Fran? He's stuck between positions.
You know, Tommy, I said this before. I think of it from a coach's standpoint. If I got an 11th or 12th spot on my roster and he's a minimum salary guy or he's a free agent and a second round guy, right? You grab him because you know every day he's going to come to work and hopefully get better.
DeAndre Daniels of UConn working out with this group, and we saw his season really turn up, all the attention on him. I don't even know that he thought he could be a first rounder, but you're down in Fort Worth. You heard the buzz during the Final Four. They beat Florida. They win a national title, and he was such a big part of this run. He's a little limited offensively, and some of these small forwards, Jay, you just wonder. You'd love every one of them to be able to have that great handle, but then there's kind of these 1 and 2 dribble guys. Where do you see Daniels in that part of his game?
Well, I've seen him be able to knock down the three-point shot very consistently, and you know, I did question his ability to handle the ball, but I'll tell you one thing, after watching him today and some of these drills, there's been multiple drills where he's been handling the basketball and making plays. Ryan, you said earlier he only had 17 assists on the season. Well, I think most of that was due to the fact that he had to make plays after catching the ball in positions to score from Ryan Boatwright and Shabazz Napier, 2 guys who dominated the ball. But look, he's young, he's athletic, he's talented. Obviously, he can use some weight onto that frame.
Right, but measures to 6'8.5" today, so that's good.
Exactly. I mean, I like his upside.
Weighs 196. There it is. Look at that.
So what you're telling me is going to get him in some sort of system here, right?
Weighs 196. It's really hard to have a power player who weighs 196 in the NBA.
Okay, a team that might have a chance at the #1 pick in the draft, the Milwaukee Bucks, their general manager with Andy Katz.
All right, thank you, Ryan. John Hammond, the general manager of the Milwaukee Bucks, now joining me. And there's obviously a lot of anticipation again about Tuesday night. You've got a legitimate shot to land the #1 pick. Take me to the Milwaukee sort of draft room. How anxious is this group about what could happen Tuesday night?
We're excited, Andy. This is a great opportunity for us as an organization to inject a player of this potential caliber into our team. We think with some of the young pieces that we have in place now, we think it can be a very good thing for us.
The last time this happened, I remember covering it, was when Milwaukee drafted Andrew Bogut. The draft was not as strong then. It was basically between Bogut and Marvin Williams. The depth of this draft, how much tougher does it make the decision going forward of what you might have to deal with if you get the #1 pick?
Well, it does make the decision a little bit tougher, but also there's a little protection in that too. In case you'd happen to slide in this lottery, we still think that we could come away with a very good player in whatever slot we may end up.
Joel Embiid certainly is in the conversation for the #1 pick. He's got a back injury. He's not here, not going through the physicals. If you were to get the #1 pick, how much do you need to get some sort of physical with Joel Embiid?
Well, I'm sure that Arn and their group will work with the team that is in that range, whatever that might be, and look, it's a part of the process. They're doing what they have to do right now and not being here, but I think they also know that for us to make a decision, we have to have all the information needed.
Appreciate it, John. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
And the Milwaukee Bucks also have 3 second-round picks in the draft. Back to you, Ryan.
Hey, Milwaukee Bucks, not great. 15 and 67. The irony being that they were actually trying to put together some kind of playoff run, and they tanked as well as anybody. Free agents doesn't really matter, but the chances of winning the overall #1 selection, 25%. You always have to worry, though, with a change of ownership, change in direction, who makes that call. So that's more to think about for the Bucks this offseason. Okay, we've seen all of the perimeter wing players working out. We're going to get to the power forwards and centers and mention a few international guys you should become more familiar with. That's next from Chicago, the NBA Combine. Inside Quest Multisport in Chicago, Group 4, the final group of Day 1 of the NBA Combine. And speaking of Combine, they combine the power forwards with the centers. Some attendance issues, as you always have. Some guys not wanting to go through the drills. It's not as deep as the small forwards and those off guards and the point guards. So really the group that you're maybe going to have to dig a little bit deeper on. Isaiah Austin, the Baylor, working out just to the side of us. Mark Madsen organizing the bigger group here as they're going through some of the tap drills. Basketball up on the backboard 3 times, finished with the dunk. And I always look at the bigs guys and think, maybe the most important part of seeing them live here isn't whether or not they can handle, whether or not they're hitting any shots, but just how they run. Who looks like they actually can run and appear to be an NBA caliber athlete at the center position. And Patrick Young certainly athletic enough from Florida, but more of a power forward, maybe even undersized for that, Fran.
Well, he is, and he's another one of those seniors that had a very good career for Billy Donovan. He was hard coached. It's really interesting. When I watched him as a young player coming out of high school, his motor did not rev to a 9 or a 10, and that really improved under Billy Donovan. But there's, he's solid. He's a workmanlike guy. He's not going to give you a ton of offense. If anything, he just needs to be a solid interior defender. I think he can hang his hat on that. But if you're looking for him to get 15 points a night, that will not happen.
I think the way Patrick Young gets into the NBA is that every workout he goes to, he does not allow the opposing big man to get post position. He has that kind of strength. He needs to play with that kind of strength, that energy on a consistent basis. This is what he was able to do in college. We've seen his offensive game mature. He has that jump hook shot with the right and the left hand. He also has an incredible ability to pursue the basketball, second, third options. That's how he has to make his money in the NBA, similar to a guy like Ben Wallace. Ben Wallace wasn't a great scorer, but Ben Wallace was a great rebounder, and he made winning plays for franchises to win games.
There was a game, guys, that I did 2 years ago against Marquette, where Billy Donovan did not start him because he didn't play hard in practice the day before. And you saw him diving on the floor here. That's really who he needs to be if he's going to make a roster.
This is a guy, as a freshman, who looked exactly like this as a freshman. And when NBA scouts took a look at him and saw him play for Team USA, they thought this is a lottery pick. And unfortunately, the skill level never caught up with the physical abilities that he has. Obviously, he has an NBA body. I think he came out of the womb with an NBA body. I mean, and when you look at him, you want to love him because of that. And fundamentally, he does things well. He just never improved enough offensively to ever warrant being a high pick. But with that said, I talked to a lot of NBA general managers who think, look, as a rotation big, a guy who's going to defend, not make mistakes, be coachable, do his thing, this is one of the safer picks in the draft because you know exactly what you're going to get with Patrick Young. You don't expect anything more from him at this point, but he can come in to this league and defend and be a strong body.
He's also the SEC Scholar Athlete of the Year at least once, maybe twice. And so, as to Chad's point, when you're Tom Thibodeau and you want to make sure your guys know where to rotate to out of pick and roll and scramble situations, you want to be able to put a young guy on the floor that has a high IQ.
You cannot overstate how physical the NBA is. All you need to do is go have the privilege to sit in those first 5 rows and see the size, the stature, the power, and the physicality. There was always that misnomer that NBA players don't play hard. Anybody that goes to a game, sits low or ball, always says, oh, my God. So that's where Patrick Young comes in because he's ready for oh, my God.
I can't afford those seats. I don't know about you.
Okay, we have more of the bigs working out again. The power forwards and the centers working out together. Some international names to check out. Just some massive bodies looking like a lot of second rounders, late roster invites to this group. We got another hour to go from Chicago.
Aaron Gordon just putting on a show tonight here.
Aaron Gordon. Oh, my goodness. Now Gordon's turn.
Throw it down, big man. One time.
Big move over. They had it slam dunk. An outstanding, explosive play by Aaron Gordon.
Welcome back to the 2014 NBA Draft Combine. Joined now by Aaron Gordon. And Aaron, before the montage, you said, you know what, if they show any highlights, it's all going to be dunks. You predicted that. So obviously you have to show a little bit more. What else can you show when you get to these individual workouts besides the dunks that they've already seen?
You know, I'm just trying to round my game out. You know, I'm trying to be a completely polished basketball player by the time my rookie season starts. I want to be good in all aspects, both ends of the court. They made it look like every single one of my points last year was a dunk. But I'm not worried about trying to prove myself to anybody. I know what got me here, and I'm going to stay that same person, and then everything else is just going to be icing on the cake.
Well, a constructive criticism of you is your free throw shooting. What have you done to improve that since the season ended?
You know, my free throws this year it was just disconnected from the rest of my game. It was like I would get to the free throw line and then I would shoot a different shot. So now what I've been working on is just connecting everything, the three-point, the 15-footer, the 17-footer, and the free throw. It's all one shot, it's all one rhythm, and it's working out well right now.
Andrew Wiggins had all that pressure at Kansas, same with Jabari Parker at Duke, to some extent Julius Randle at Kentucky. How much easier for you was it as a freshman that you didn't have to do everything at Arizona?
I mean, they all had good teams, too. It's not like they had very bad teams. Arizona, it was a really team-oriented program. For me to be put in with players like Nick Johnson, Brandon Ashley, Caleb Tarzinski, Rondé Hollis-Jefferson, I can keep going on and on. It made it easy. It was a good feel. It was a good vibe. It just allowed me to just play basketball the way I like to play it, and it was fun.
Obviously, you're going to go through some individual team workouts coming up. You're going to show how you can make free throws. You can do a little bit of a face-up game. Once you get to next season, though, how do you think your game will translate at the NBA level, especially in the open court?
Like you just said, it's an open court. In college, it's a lot tighter. There's pack line defense. You can't stay in the middle of the key. I'm going to be able to get by somebody and be able to be at the rim, maybe with one extra defender. My jump shot will be able to be knocked down consistently. I'm just going to be a forward, you know. That's basically my plan.
Once you get to the NBA, Aaron Gordon versus Blake Griffin, in the way you can dunk, who can win a dunk contest if it's straight up you versus Blake Griffin?
I'm not sure, man. I'm not sure. I have no comment on that. We'll just see when we get there. If they want to invite me into the dunk contest, I'd be more than happy to show some things.
Guys, I think that if you were to compete with Blake Griffin, I'm not saying he'd win, but certainly entering the NBA, he's got some of these highlight reels that he can certainly put on display. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Andy. And Blake Griffin was one of the players that Aaron Gordon was compared to before he came into Arizona. You look at some of these numbers, 30 points, 7 assists, 5 blocks in the first 2 tournament games, so a smaller sample there. Chad, when you watch Gordon, it's one of those guys where if you decide ahead of time you want to hate him, you'll find things you won't like. If you decide ahead of time you're going to like him, you're also going to find those same things. So when you hear people talk about Gordon as a pro, it really is a taste thing for him as a prospect.
It is, and it's what you value. If you're looking for a player to make that transition to the small forward, I don't think there was a lot that he showed there about his ability to be a small forward as far as shooting the basketball. He's not a very good shooter. His three-point percentage was impressive this year, but it was a very small sample size, and so I don't think you can really look at it that way. But when you look at him defensively, when you look at him athletically, when you look at what he brings to the table that way, he reminded me a little bit of a young Andre Kirilenko out of Utah. Just a guy who's got a nose for the ball, gets around things, makes plays. You know, Kirilenko was never a guy who's going to drop 25 points on you on any given night, but he could play the 3 and the 4 and just do a lot of different things for you. And I think that's if you love a basketball player, I think Aaron Gordon's more than an athlete. I think he's a basketball player.
And when you look at some of those comparisons, which are always really, really hard, like sometimes you just resist them because players are so unique. Gordon, you had mentioned Andre Kirilenko, maybe even a little Sean Marion.
Except Sean shot it much better at UNLV than Aaron did.
Listen, I love this kid. Here's the good news. He'll be the youngest player in the draft coming up, and he may be one of the 3 best athletes. But here's the things I have questions about with him. By the way, he's an unbelievable kid from a great family, high character guy, and had a monster year. 42% from the foul line. Coaches never really talk about this, but he's basically going to be an invisible turnover every other time up the floor. So he's got to improve that. That's 1. 2, I watched a lot of tape of him, and Frank Kaminsky, Nigel Hayes from Wisconsin, Mike Moser, Josh Scott from Colorado, they all posted him up and backed him down. And he had trouble guarding some perimeter guys, too. I think when we see a great athlete and we don't have anything offensively to hang our hat on, Jay, we say automatically, great defender. I love his energy, but a coach who drafts him, and he's going in the top 8, has got to figure out how the best way to play him. The Kirilenko comparison is outstanding because you don't have to run any plays for this kid. Just let him get up and down the floor, rebound the backside, and use his athleticism.
You know, I think he's a great weak side defender. I think he's very good at making reads, coming over from the weak side, blocking shots. Usually some of the players he was able to block their shots when he was on the ball were smaller players, so he'll see bigger players on the next level. But I love the kid's tenacity. He does play with his ferocity on the defensive and offensive end, and I think could be utilized heavily on an NBA team. Now, people have compared him to Blake Griffin. I don't think he has the polished moves that Blake Griffin had in college, down low on the block. At times you saw, we got a chance to sit courtside and watch him play against Colorado, and every time he caught the ball on the block, everybody kind of cringed because you didn't know what kind of move he was going to do, and he didn't have a good touch. But I think these are all things that if you have the patience as a GM, you can work with him on. But he has the raw athletic ability and the mindset to be very successful.
18 years old right now.
See that little brightness in his eyes, that little sort of twinkle and electricity? Jerry West used to always talk about a guy having bright eyes. You could just see this liveliness, this frenetic energy. When you're big like this and this skilled and you got that brightness and that energy about you, there's something there that is special.
Well, maybe he impressed you in the interview part of it. Unfortunately, a lot of the guys not going through all of the drills. Tom, if we were to look at some of the positions, and we've gone through the point, the off guards and the small forwards that combine the power forwards and centers, give me somebody that's impressed you at least on day 1.
I'm going to stick with an interview. It was Doug McDermott. I'm sorry. So much of this camp is about talking. And when we were going to talk about somebody, Doug McDermott, when he talked about his need to grow emotionally, his need to grow mentally. That's why he went back to school. I'm just so impressed. When you sit and talk eyeball to eyeball with some of these kids, they reveal who they are, they show what they are, and he's not only Dougie McBuckets who's going to bring it every day on the court, he will bring it with his character and his professionalism.
Chad?
I think Zach Levine out here, playing the way he did. He shot the ball well in drills. I also will say, we talked about Jordan Adams and his spare tire. He dropped down to 208. He's dropped 22 pounds since his playing weight at UCLA, and I think that makes a difference. And you're seeing the video there of Levine today. 2 UCLA players who I think have come here and shown something. One, by losing some weight and showing that I'm serious about this draft process.
And Adam shot it really well, too, in his shooting drill.
He also had 36 out of 50. He was the second best spot-up shooter here today. And then Levine being out there with those point guards and just having that athleticism and shot the ball really well from NBA 3.
Somebody for you, Jay?
I would probably have to go with KJ McDaniels, just his ability to defend. I think this is one of the most underrated kids in the draft. He's been hungry all year long, first team all ACC. And he has the mindset that he wants to compete. And we talk about wing defenders. At 6'6", 6'7", he's a guy that can defend that position. Plus, we've seen his offensive game immensely mature from one year to the next. And I think it's that mindset. He's going to go a little bit later, but like you said before, Chad, like he's a guy that can be picked up right at the end of the lottery. He goes to a good team. He's a great plug-in guy and can be an impactful player right away.
Fran, you got a center from us that's really caught your eye?
No, not really, because I don't care what they do back here. I watched them all on tape, and I've watched them in person. And I've seen all these guys. So in terms of what they're doing behind me, I'm not that impressed, only because I've seen them a lot. But what does impress me is what Chad said about Jordan Adams. I've been a Jordan Adams fan for the last 2 months on tape. Not before that, but
not
on
at
tape.
UCLA, but just watching.
Exactly. And the fact that he has dropped weight, and I think he's got an NBA game, that says something to me about his maturity and his ability to get ready for the job interview, because that's what this is behind us. It's a job interview. I don't care how many times these guys dunk or post up. We've seen what they can do, and they're not going to trick me, because I know what they can do.
We're going to have more on the big men, including the center group, but also some of the power forwards that aren't working out. How do you make a pick between Vonleh, Payne, and Gordon? More from Chicago, day one of the Combine. It's ESPN2. The Draft Combine is on ESPNU and ESPN2. Watch these future NBA stars showcase their skills on the hard court and shooting, agility tests, and scrimmages. The NBA Draft Combine, Friday starting at 10 a.m. Eastern on ESPNU, and then over at 1 Eastern. Our coverage 2 more hours on ESPN2, also live on Watch ESPN.
Take it.
The final group from today, the power forwards / centers. And one player that we look back on after his freshman year, James Michael McAdoo, could have been a lottery pick at North Carolina, hasn't really developed. Watching him here, I mean, physically, he still stands out. Athletically, we know there's something there, Chad, but kind of like Patrick Young a little bit, not what the scouts wanted from the skill sets.
Yeah, here's another guy that had he left as a freshman, coming off the bench at North Carolina, limited exposure, would have been a top 5 pick in the draft. NBA teams were disappointed when he didn't come out. It was all about projection. You looked at his body, you looked at his pedigree coming out of high school. He was ranked as one of the top 2 or 3 high school players in the country, and the projection was all there. But then as a sophomore and as a junior, he lacked that improvement in his game. You expect more out of him after his freshman year when he got more minutes, and he really never developed to be more than a really great athlete. And now he's a second-round pick if he gets drafted at all.
Wow. I got a problem. I got a problem with people who projected him so high, because he played at a small high school, okay, in Norfolk. He is who he is. And the only reason he got some buzz at the end of his freshman year is because John Henson was hurt. He is who he is. I think he's a serviceable late first, second-round pick. He runs like the wind, Jay. That's what I love about him. But I hate it when kids are projected so high. If he would have gone in the top 10, some NBA team, their GM would have been fired. So it is what it is on film. You watch him, you go, hey, he's got holes in his game. But there are things I like about him. Great kid, runs hard, skill level, got to improve, and he's a poor foul shooter. I hope he makes it, because he's been maligned, and he's stuck in there for 3 years at Carolina, and he's a good kid.
I hope all these kids make it, first off. And as it pertains to James Michael McAdoo, I'm a fan of his. Look, to mentally have to go through after your freshman year where you're projected to be a top 5 pick, go through the downs that he went through, because like we said before, you stay after your projected lottery, we expect big time things out of you the next year. He never lived up to that, but this year I thought was a breakout year for him. Yes, he struggled at free throws, but you saw his game improve drastically, and he continued to work at it, and that sets him a little bit apart mentality-wise, that he's been through adversity and he's continued to fight it, and his skill set is one that's improving a little bit.
I wish he would have gone after the freshman year, because that was the stock was as high as it would ever be.
Similar to Tyler Ennis this year,
Very much
right?
so.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have had a problem if he left, because he had that small sample size in the NCAA tournament when Henson was hurt, where he was very solid. Not great, but solid.
But that's what I said. When you play with Tyler Zeller, you play with Harrison Barnes, you play with Kendall Marshall, you play with Reggie Bullock, it's easy to hide some of your deficiencies when you play with that great of talent.
And all those guys struggled, by the way, when Kendall Marshall was hurt in the NCAA tournament.
At least the measurements there, that size, you can see him behind us with all those other centers actually standing out. One of our other members of the team here for ESPN.com, one of the best college basketball writers in the country and a really good liaison for the NBA front offices, is Jeff Goodman, who's covered this draft for a really long time. And Jeff, when you look at some of the questions at the top of this draft, it really starts with Dante Exum. We know where Parker is. We've seen Wiggins. We're worried about Embiid's health. But how does Exum really factor in here, considering he didn't play any ball in the States this year?
Well, nobody's seen him. I spent a couple days out with him in L.A. a few weeks ago, and nobody's seen this kid. No NBA team has seen him since last July at the under-19s. So he is the ultimate mystery guy. I watched him work out for a couple days, and he looks the part. Every bit of 6'5.5", 6'6", athletic, not a great shooter, and I think he's going to have trouble making shots from three-point range, but good mid-range, really explosive, great first step. But listen, there's only so much we can see in a one-on-0 workout, which is all he's really going to do for these teams. And I think most NBA GMs, I think the more than 50% of the NBA GMs right now have never laid eyes on Dante Exum. So what do you do if you're a GM? Do you rely on your scouts, your staff that's maybe been out and seen him at the Nike Hoop Summit or the under-19s or maybe the under-17s 3 years ago, and do you roll the dice with a guy without seeing him that much? I don't know.
Jeff, how do you think he'll deal with the physicality of the game on the next level? And here's the trick of the trade for the agent, because now from an agent of Exum, I'm like, well, I'm worried about who he gets put into workouts with because I want my client to look the best.
They're not going to let him work out with anybody.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, he's going to be a 1-0 guy. They're not going to let him work out with absolutely anybody, and the physical play will be an issue. I mean, he said he's at about 196 right now. He celebrates when he gets to 200. He does. They throw a party, the family. And the kid's a great kid, though. Off the charts. I mean, I just listened to him in the media, all the media stuff. He blew it away. I mean, absolutely kills it. High character kid. The question is, again, where does he go? Where does he fit? Is he a point guard? Is he a two guard?
And Chad, you know this. He's got great representation with Rob Pelinka, who's got Kobe. And I think Jeff's exactly right. They're not messing around. There's no reason for him to do anything except do some workouts, interview great, and likely be taken in the top 5.
This is what Rob does. I mean, he did it with Dion Waiters. Remember, Dion Waiters left this camp before he started to do anything because Rob got a promise and then parlayed that promise, which I think was 13 to the Suns, all the way up to the number 4 pick in the draft. It's what he does. And with Exum, here's the challenge for Exum. You've got big names, Jabari Parker, Joel Embiid, Andrew Wiggins. Does a general manager take Dante Exum over those known guys? How do you sell your owner on that? How do you sell your fans on that? How do you sell the rest of the players on that? That's the challenge that Rob Pelinka's got to figure out right now, because I think on talent, he deserves to be in consideration with those guys, but it's about selling your pick to your owner, to your coach, to your team, and to your fans. That's the hardest sell.
He's going to be a 19-year-old rookie, and just to put it in perspective, Anthony Davis is one of the best players in college basketball in the last decade, and by all accounts has had 2 great years in the NBA, 0 playoff appearances so far. So with Exum, the youth, it's going to take time because he's going to be playing as a 19-year-old, a baby in a man's league.
Davis would probably argue there's a few injuries.
Yeah, I was going to say.
For New Orleans.
New Orleans is absolutely
right.
right.
You guys are absolutely right. Exum and Pelinka, they played this perfectly. Everybody's infatuated with this guy. And when you look at fan bases, they're already hoping. Like, think about that. A fan base in this day and age who's never seen the kid play is going, I really hope we don't pass on this guy. I mean, that doesn't happen in the NBA draft, at least not in 2014. It shouldn't, unless you have the internet.
You know, I will say this, guys.
If he sucks, they're going to kill me.
I will say
it's not your fault anymore, Chad.
I will say this. We've seen him at the Hoop Summit. I saw him in Prague last summer. He did make 2 or 3 plays that just absolutely took my breath away. And I was sitting with some other NBA people, and I hate to say Michael Jordan, but I'm old enough to remember what Michael looked like body-wise at that age.
Gangly,
but athletic, and he's got some of that, and I know I'm going to get killed for comparing him to Michael Jordan.
You're just saying his body type.
But he's got an it
Headline,
factor.
Fran, Exum equals Michael Jordan.
He's got an it factor that you're intrigued with, even though the body of work.
I think it's Michael Carter Williams is the closest comparison. Body.
That's not as exciting as a Michael.
Shooting. Athletic. I think he's more.
He's a little more, but Michael Carter Williams is pretty athletic.
Well, I think there's Russell Westbrook in there. There's Michael Carter Williams. He's a guy I can't put my finger on.
Michael Carter's a better pure point guard. We don't know whether this kid's a pure point guard or not.
I don't think he's a point guard. I think he's.
You think he's a
guard.
two?
He's a guard.
But if you sell him as a two, and this is what Rob Pelinka is doing, if you sell him as a 6'6" 2 guard who's not a good shooter, well. Who's going to take him?
You know what? The way
you got to sell him as a point guard.
But not the way the NBA is coached these days. There's no. I mean, other than Chris Paul and Steve Nash and 2 or 3 other guys, who are the point guards, Jay?
No, I think you can sell him as a playmaker.
Playmaker.
I think you can sell him as a playmaker. A guy that can play multiple positions based upon need.
Yeah.
I don't want to do this either, but I guess we apparently have a breakdown that compares Exum to Kobe.
Take it away, Fran.
No, not me. No, Jay, it's Chad.
That wasn't me.
Who did this?
That wasn't me. What, because they're rep by the same agent?
Who sent in this breakdown?
Well, listen, I've always been impressed with him, and he's got the size, he's got a great personality, and again he's going to be 19 playing in the league. He's one of the youngest guys in this draft.
I got a chance to watch the Hoop Summit, and one of the things, and I haven't seen the kid play, okay, with the exception of the Hoop Summit, one of the things I found impressive about him, Fran, for a player at 19 years old.
18,
excuse me.
Yeah.
He made the easy play. He made the easy play. I think that's so underrated because you have so many of these young players who want to make the home run. They want to make the million miles per hour pass instead of just making the simple and the right pass.
He can get to the rim, and because he can get to the rim, and defenses are going to collapse on him, he knows how to make the right pass to the open guy. He's not Michael Carter Williams and sees the floor and crazy sees the floor, but he can get to the rim and can make the right pass.
Exum not here today, but going through the interview process. You're going to have all those measurements for you as we get into day 2 of the NBA Combine. Jeff Goodman will be back. Thanks for everything tonight, and we'll have him as part of our coverage here in Chicago moving forward. We come back, though, we'll take a look. Paint the rims, the big guys in the shooting drill.
Welcome back to Chicago, Illinois for the 2014 NBA Draft Combine. And look, it's not raining anymore. It's mid-May, not mid-March. A little blustery and rainy outside, but inside, we're nice and warm here. Getting ready for the end of day 1 here at the NBA Draft Combine. Now joined by Cleveland Cavaliers GM David Griffin, the new GM. Congratulations on the new job. It was an eventful week. Mike Brown out as head coach. On Tuesday, you're going to learn where you're going to land in the lottery. What's the most important decision that's going to happen here with your new title over the next couple of weeks?
I don't think there's one individual decision that's going to be bigger than the rest. We've got to start to get better results, and that's going to be the culmination of a lot of different decisions that are made by a lot of people.
A year ago, it was not a draft like this one. The Cavs surprised everyone right up until the first pick in selecting Anthony Bennett. How do you make him a better player, more contributing player next season?
Well, I think for starters, he starts the year healthy. He was underwater a little bit last year when he started. It's a very difficult thing to go through as a rookie when you're not in shape because you've been injured, and then you continue to sort of spiral because from a confidence standpoint, it's very hard to play that way. Anthony learned a lot from his experience. I know he's highly motivated. So I think just opportunity is what he needs at this point.
If you don't get into that top spot and you end up at number 9 in the lottery, how deep is this lottery to where you could get a contributing player next year?
I think depending on how things shake out, we could certainly do well. I think there's pieces that could fit our roster well at that pick. But I also think we're open-minded to doing a lot of things there as well.
You've got also the second-round pick. What are the chances that you could be very active on draft night?
I would think we could be very active all the way through draft night. I think we're looking to be really aggressive this offseason and improve our team.
Speaking of aggressiveness, you've got a coaching opening. There are other franchises like New York, like Utah that have a position, and LA that have a position to fill. What's your timetable on doing that before the draft?
I don't think we have a prescribed timetable right now. I think what we really want to make sure we do is get this right. I think this is a function of fit as much as anything else. So if we find the right fit and we know we're a marriage, we could do it quickly. And if we don't, we're in no rush whatsoever.
All right, we'll have to wait and see what that fit is and see where you land in the lottery. David Griffin, the new general manager of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Let's go back to you guys at the set.
Cavaliers a bit of a surprise, maybe not so once Griff was named the full-time general manager. They get rid of Mike Brown a second time. You look at where they're sitting in the lottery. They put a big emphasis last year on making the playoffs. They trade for Luol Deng. It doesn't work out. They're heading in another direction. But Tom, there are pieces still there. Just curious to see what you think about their offseason planning.
There's pieces. Look at the bottom. $23 million in flexibility. They've got their young guys coming of age together. They just have not performed well together. So they're right there ready to pop, and David Griffin can make this team different. There's a lot of flexibility to do uneven trades, to get a great draft pick, and then to improve that roster.
Back to the big guys. Just call them the bigs at this point. Power forwards and centers working out together. Junior power forward, 6'8", out of Tennessee, Jarnell Stokes. A lot of guys really like him. He's not the fastest, most polished player, but he's going to live in the post, Fran, constantly call for the basketball, and he's just really crafty around the rim.
I think he's going to hang his hat in the league on his rebounding. Elite, really. 22 double-doubles this year. His analytics in terms of his rebounding off the charts. So that's how he's going to do it. He really struggles to score over a length, but that's okay because what he needs to become is a workman-like rebounder, a Paul Millsap type, who we know is much better now than he was when he came into the league. When I watch him on tape, I'm amazed at his athleticism for a guy 260. I almost wish he'd chosen football because he'd be a first-round pick, a top-5 pick. But given the fact that he's a basketball player, he's a heck of a rebounder.
He's similar to Patrick Young. There's something to be said on the NBA level about carving out space, about meeting people high, now allowing guys like Tim Duncan to get position on the block. He has that size to him. He has that kind of strength to him. Is his offensive game somewhat limited against taller, more athletic players? Yes, he's a below-the-rim kind of guy. But, like, once again, he's not going to be drafted to score 20 points. He's going to be picked up on a team to play there defensively and give them points off the bench if he could.
We always had a list. The Beast Four. It's that undersized guy that gets overlooked because he can't score the ball and he can't score over length, et cetera, and those Beast Fours translate to the NBA. They're strong, powerful. This kid is a perfect example. Add to that his military history with his father and growing up in a disciplined family. He's young, and look at the body on this kid. He is just so put together. Measured 7'1", reach. This is an intriguing candidate that if I'm with my executive team, we are talking about this Beast 4 category, Chad.
And Fran pointed out the analytic guys love him. There's a lot of analytics that show that he's one of the better prospects in this draft. He's young for his class. He's 20-year-old junior. That's unique as well. And you're right. These undersized fours that prove in college basketball that they can rebound on both ends tend to translate more than some of the other things that we look at in college basketball. I think Stokes is definitely one of those sleepers in the 20s.
One of the other bigs also staying in the SEC, Johnny O'Bryant, who's about 260. But when you watched him with this LSU team this year, he was somebody that stood out. I mean, there's a reason why you actually get invited to the combine. As weak as this group may be collectively, Jay, he's somebody that another big body can face up maybe a little bit more than Stokes can.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Johnny O'Bryant. Watching him play at LSU, he was a man down low. He has the size, he has the length. He has the ability to score down low on the block, and defensively, he has the ability to guard the ball. We talk about a lot of guys being great shot blockers from the weak side, but he has the ability actually to one-on-one defend the post, and he has an array of moves down the post too. He's also good at getting low to the ground and getting position, utilizing a whole bunch of head fakes around to get his players lifted. Finishing through contact is something else he's pretty spectacular at.
And when I look at him, I look at his size and say, can he defend fours and some fives in the NBA? And I think he can because he's got a great body. And if you want a great tape, watch the first Kentucky game that LSU won in Baton Rouge. Was the best player on the floor among about 8 or 9 NBA players. That night, best player on the floor.
And Julius Randle had a very difficult time scoring against him as well.
Julius was 10 of 31 against LSU this year in 3 games because of Johnny O'Bryant, Jarrell Martin, and Jordan Mickey. It doesn't say anything about Julius.
That's an NBA front line, though.
That's an NBA front line, but it says a lot about LSU. And they got Elbert Robinson coming in next year at 7'1", about 280.
Lack of length, though, a question mark for him. Lack of elite athletic ability, a question mark for him. And given his production at LSU, I think he's a solid second-round pick.
I think what helped him, Chad, early in the year was he's playing harder than he did as a younger player, Jay, and he's gotten himself in better shape. He was very good in Orlando, and then he parlayed that into a solid junior year. And I just think the body type translates well as a second-rounder.
Okay, so that's Johnny O'Brien and Jarnell Stokes, a couple SEC guys. We're going to go back over to the Big 12, a couple Baylor products, including Corey Jefferson. Great athlete. Let's see how he measures up with his testing skills a little bit later today. Live from Chicago, day one of the NBA Combine on ESPN2 from Quest Multi-Sport. It's our second year here. Been moved around a little bit. Everybody loves coming to Chicago, even some bad weather like today. We'll see if that turns around. 5 hours of coverage with Chad Ford, Tom Penn, Fran Fraschilla, Jay Williams. I'm Ryan Russillo. Andy Katz out there working the room, the final group of power forwards and centers. And out of Baylor, Jay, Corey Jefferson, who maybe has a little bit more of that stretch game. You know, I don't know. That's the thing, is you hope to see some of that, and then some of the guys live right around the rim. Where does Jefferson fit in where he plays on the floor?
Well, he has the ability to knock down the mid-range jump shot. I got a chance to go to Baylor last year when he was thinking about leaving, and I didn't think he was particularly ready to leave after last year. And I thought this was a year of maturity for him. He grew into the leader that Scott Drew and company expected him to be, almost a double-double guy. He can play with his back to the basket, but also can be utilized with Kenny Cherry in the pick-and-pop scenario. And I like him, but once again, I think he's going to be a guy somewhere in the second round if he's able to get drafted, and he has to find his way, Fran. There's a lot of guys in this group that are going to be like that.
Yeah, he's a fifth-year guy, redshirted his second year, and he played around pros when you think about it. Quincy Miller, Quincy A.C., Udo, Perry Jones. Here's what you like about him. He knows who he is. There was a stretch for a while early in the year where he was trying to prove to NBA people that he was a perimeter guy.
Yep.
He's a pick-and-pop guy for sure, but he's made his money, so to speak, in terms of his effort, energy on the glass. He was so underrated for so long, he became overrated. He's back to being underrated. Second-round guy, I think, could very well make a team. High character guy.
And I'm going to say this. You know, a lot of people out there in the Twitterverse want to bash people when you say, I don't know if this guy's going to get drafted. There are a lot of players out there who haven't gotten drafted, then making more money than the players who did get drafted in the second round because it's tax-free. Just because you don't make the NBA doesn't mean you can't be very successful at playing this game of basketball.
Well, somebody that was extremely successful right here in his hometown of Chicago, Scottie Pippen, Hall of Famer with Andy Katz.
All right, thank you, Ryan. And back in the day when you were coming through the draft, they had this process. I believe it maybe at Moody Bible Institute. You had to get out there and play. It's a little bit different now. How do you view it through your prism that you had to certainly play and earn your way versus now it's handled a little bit differently where not as many guys play during the Combine?
Yeah, well, it's a little bit different, but I think the Combine is definitely better. I think they've been able to raise the talent level up and really get down to the players that they feel are going to be first or second rounders. But you know, overall, I think the players come here and really they want to prove themselves and get their stock up and, you know, show to the scouts that you know, they deserve to be the top pick.
Now, as the assistant to the president of the Bulls, you have actually been out on the road a little bit. You did see Julius Randle. What were your impressions?
He's a great player. He's got a live body, a lefty, so those guys are normally very crafty, very difficult to guard. But you know, I really like his play. I like his energy, his enthusiasm, and I guess his love and passion for the game.
This is perceived to be a much deeper draft than a year ago. How hard is it, though, as a rookie, to really make a significant contribution right now in the NBA?
Well, I mean, there's some spots out there that, you know, teams could use some guys coming in and, you know, make an initial impact. But, you know, there are a lot of teams out there that already are stocked, and, you know, having a lot of these young guys coming in don't really give them an opportunity to play in the next year or two. But, you know, you never know. You know, it all depends on the individual and how hard he's working and how hard he's willing to work going forward.
One of your former teammates, Steve Kerr, now named as the new head coach of the Golden State Warriors, had never coached before at any level. You were his teammate during the glory days here in Chicago. What did you see from Steve that maybe can translate to becoming a successful head coach?
Oh, well, he's a very intellectual guy, you know, and he has a great sense for the game. You know, beyond, you know, besides his great playing as a player and a great teammate, you know, he's just a good people person, and I think he has the right personality, the right demeanor to be a coach.
Thank you, Scotty.
All right, appreciate it.
Back to you, Ryan.
Scottie Pippen with Andy Katz. Okay, so looking at some of the freshman forwards, and both Noah Vonleh of Indiana and Julius Randle of Kentucky not going through the drill portion of the combine. They're very different players, Tom. Vonleh, you know you're going to get something from him outside, but maybe Randle's ability is more translatable. How do you stack these two up?
Look at that bottom line right there. 43% as a three-point shooter for Vonleh. You're right, that makes him totally different, and this is how the game has changed. If you think of Chris Bosh and the way he at almost 7 feet turns faces and hits threes, Vonleh's going to have the ability to do some of that. We show his power game down low, jump hooks with both hands, ability to spin, ability to finish. It's really the differentiator is where he can step aside, step out, and pick and pop. It's all about spacing now in the NBA. Coaches look to create spacing, create driving lanes. You cannot redirect or put your hands on the driver. Pull those bigs away. We see it all the time. We see it in playoff action. Can you space the floor? That's what is coveted right now, is those stretch fours, those shooters.
And one of those stretch fours is actually a guy that turns into a stretch five with the Miami Heat now. Originally, Bosh was always a power forward with Toronto. They wanted him to be a power forward with Miami. He's playing some center. How do you feel about that comparison, Chad?
I think statistically that's the comp for him. And the interesting thing about Vonleh is he's more of a center than Bosh ever was. He's going to have a better body. He's got that 7'4" wingspan. He's got that standing reach that is nearly 9 feet tall. He's a shot blocker. He blocked about 2 shots a game in 40 minutes at Indiana. And the thinking was Julius Randle was the better rebounder of the two, but when you look at the per 40 numbers, they basically were the same as far as rebounders go. I think Vonleh has some upside there that Randle doesn't because of the physical abilities that he has and the ability to stretch the floor. Again, depends on what you need as a team. But I actually lean a little bit towards Vonleh as who is going to be the best NBA prospect in 5 years. I lean Vonleh a little bit.
All things being said, you're also looking at the second youngest guy in the draft. So you're thinking as a GM, I would think, boy, what do we got when we do get him at 23? And so all those things that Chad said, I love about Vonleh. Here's another thing about him. Hard coached again by Tom Crean, and he's almost halfway to his degree, and he's only been in college 1 summer, 2 semesters, and an intersession. Not bad.
One thing I love about him and watching Yogi Ferrell play, he has amazing hands. He has really good hands. Some of the passes that Yogi was throwing to him this year were passes that other bigs wouldn't catch, and his ability to focus that and grab the ball with 2 hands and finish on top of having an already offensively polished game, I think he's one of the best talents in the draft.
The way you look at it and kind of stack up on some of the boards that you've had out there, Chad, and the people you talk to, there's maybe that group of 5 that we've accepted, but then 6 through 10 in a lot of different orders, Vonleh, Gordon, and Julius Randle. So those are the top power forwards. You can check out the full 100-player ranking from Chad Ford on ESPN.com. We will continue our coverage day 1, finishing up here in Chicago, the NBA Combine. The NBA playoffs continue tonight on ESPN. First at 8, Paul George and the Indiana Pacers face John Wall and the Wizards at 10:30. Kevin Durant and the Thunder battle Blake Griffin and the Clippers. It all starts with Kia NBA Countdown at 7:30. Also live on Watch ESPN. NBA playoffs, Game 6 of the conference semifinals tonight on ESPN and also the Watch ESPN app. We are inside Quest Multisport in Chicago, finishing day 1 of the NBA Combine. It's the power forwards and the centers, and we just got done talking about Noah Vonleh and Julius Randle and how that matched up. All these prospects, even if they didn't participate in the drills, the 60 that were invited to the Combine, all got measured, and it looks like Vonleh actually has the best power forward wingspan, which is really something that people worry about with Randle. So another thing to look at when you're trying to compare who could go higher in the draft.
All right, what's 88 inches? How many feet is that?
7'4".
7'4". Okay.
It's actually 7'4" and a half. I mean, that's huge.
That's monstrous for a center.
And he's 6'8" in socks. That's that huge plus that you talk about.
Well, one of the other power forwards that actually did not take part in the drills, his agent saying dealing with a bout of mono, caught up with our Andy Katz from Michigan State. It's Adrian Payne.
Well, Adrian, I'm talking to a lot of different NBA personnel. They've mentioned you as a potential, mid to lottery type sleeper player that really could rise up into the first round. Why do you think they believe in you in that way?
Because I show them so many things on the court. I'm capable of guarding many positions, and I'm just I play hard, and I produce for my team.
This has been a young man's game, or young man's draft, I should say. What do you think you showed over your career that you needed to do to basically get to this point and spend 4 years at college?
Just how I continue to get better every year. Just expanding my game and my role in the team. Just being able to, I came in not as a good player and couldn't score that well, and now I'm able to score and just play better defense, pick up things easier, and this has been a great ride.
How key is it for a big man to be versatile, to step out and make threes?
It's big, especially in the NBA. You gotta. That's what they're going to now. A lot of big guys capable of knocking down a long-range shot. So I think I'll be able to fit in, just well.
Thanks, Adrian.
Thank you.
One of the things you look at with Payne, sure, he turned 23 in February, but I think anybody that just watched him play at Michigan State loved his toughness, that he can stretch it out and shoot, but he still had pretty good rebounding numbers for somebody that shot that many threes and played less than 30 minutes a game.
What I love about this kid is he's got an NBA game. In other words, he fits into the slot. He's a pick and pop guy for a big. He puts enormous pressure on the opponent's front line, and he's got the size that can defend power forwards and a lot of centers. And it gets back to what I said earlier about being hard coached with Tom Izzo. Tom Izzo guys generally translate to the league. He's really a safe pick right in the middle of the first round, because I think you could stick him on the floor next year, even on a playoff team, and he'll give you some minutes.
I'm not sure what the knock on him is other than he's 23. I mean, you look at this guy, he rebounds, he's an athlete, he has great size, has a 7'4" wingspan, a 9'1" standing reach. He shot over 40% from three. He can score down low. He has an NBA body. He's a great young man. When you talk to him, he's an intelligent young man. The only thing that you can say about him is that he's 23. If he's 19, he's a top 3 pick in the draft based off of what he did at Michigan State this year. Because you don't find bigs in the NBA that also can guard the pick and roll like he can guard the pick and roll as well. I mean, there's not a lot of holes in his game, and all you can say is it took him a while to get there. And that's true. It took him a while to get there, but he's there now.
That's the point. He's there now, and if you're 23 and you're picking later in the draft, you want 23. You don't always want 18 or 19. If you can get somebody that helps you right now, who's been hard coached, who's fundamental, good feet, can space guys defensively, can switch defensively and space guys by guarding with his length and ability to put it on the deck too. You're right, Chad. He's got a well-rounded resume, and bigs rise. When you go through this process, the big guys will rise over time and move up that ladder. And look at these measurements. Strong, Jay.
Yeah, when we get a chance to see him height without shoes, 6'9", wingspan 7'4", something similar to Noah Valet as well. I think one of the things that really stood out for me this year, watching him shoot the basketball with confidence, I think he fell in love with it a little bit.
Yep.
But still, showing that ability was something that really helped him become even more unique because of his ability to knock down that mid-range jump shot, that three-point jump shot, and extend that range.
Hey, fall in love with it when you're shooting 40% from
Go
ahead and fall in love with it.
And he's not as good a post-up player as he could be, but he's got this strength of stretching the defense.
I just wonder what kind of shoes he's wearing, because he only got 3/4 of an inch on that height adjustment, so he went in there with slippers. Adrian
New shoe deal. New shoe deal.
All right, we'll wrap up all
Williams.
the actions from day one in Chicago, the NBA Combine here on ESPN2. Wrapping up day one of the NBA Combine for the 2014 NBA Draft. Chad Ford, Fran Fraschilla, Tom Penn, Jay Williams, Andy Katz, Jeff Goodman helping as well. I'm Ryan Russillo. We are just watching the very end of today's drills. The power forwards and centers, not the strongest group. Was there anyone out there that kind of surprised you, caught your eye?
Out of the big guys?
Yeah. Is there anything there, Chad? Give me something, man. Something you got excited about.
No.
Okay, that's what I thought. I saw Alec Brown knock down a bunch of shots.
Did you?
From Green Bay.
Did that get you excited?
Yeah, he's 7-1. He hit a bunch of threes. It was great in the shooting drill. He had 2 against Wisconsin.
He's got a teammate who'll be in this combine next year, a little Kiefer Sykes. But you know what? Cam Bairstow had a heck of a year for New Mexico. He's a self-made guy.
Another Australian.
Yeah, another Australian. He was so hard to guard. Kansas played him. And Bill Self said he was the hardest guy to guard one-on-one this year. He's a journeyman, but you talk about a warrior. I just enjoy watching him. He's like here's one for you. He's like a Louis Scola type. that if at worst is going to be playing against the USA Olympic team when he's 28 years old for the Aussies.
I thought Jimmy Dykes was back in the set when you started bringing out all these hard-to-guard statements.
You know who the guy that everybody wants to like out here is Isaiah Austin.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about a guy.
2 years we've been hearing this.
Yeah, talk about a guy that in high school was someone who they thought would be a top 5 pick. He's got the size. He's got the wingspan. He was a versatile guy who could step out a little bit and play down low, and just never really quite put it all together, though I think the second half of this sophomore season, he started to a little bit. If his body was better, then you could project him as a big in the NBA, or if he shot the ball a little bit better, had a better perimeter game, maybe he's a stretch 4. He's still caught in between there, but I think a lot of NBA teams still look at him as a guy who has upside and a guy who could, maybe with some D-League experience and some strength training, still become a very, very good NBA prospect.
Okay, so day 1 almost done, and we get all the reaction. Guys, Chad will be over at the hotel finding out everything that's going on. So day 2 can actually be a lot more exciting. Tom over there and just trying to figure out, all right, who created some buzz for themselves? We get all those measurements, so it's now finally official. No more rosters from the college insider, you know what I mean, plugging this stuff up on the roster. Was there something from day 1 storyline and impression that a player made on you, Jay?
Just Zach LaVine. Getting a chance to see him, and you said it earlier, Chad, when he came out, how tall he was, and understanding how athletically freakish he was as well. His ability to shoot the basketball, understanding, watching him even in the guard workouts, his ability to handle the basketball. This is somebody, once again, we didn't see play a lot at the point guard position at UCLA. And those responsibilities were delegated to guys like Kyle Anderson, you know, the other point guard that came off the bench, you know, for UCLA. So for Zach LaVine, playing limited minutes this year, understanding, trying to fit in his offensive game plan, forcing it at times. But I really think this is a kid, if he plays 20 to 25 minutes, you would have seen his point production go up, also with his assists. I think he's going to be a special talent, and his stock is increasing.
Zach LaVine is the high school pitcher with the 96-mile-an-hour fastball that you know is not ready for the major leagues yet, but you just want to draft him anyway. I agree with you, Jay, but I like the fact that Jordan Adams came in here, got in shape. He's a basketball player, very valuable and versatile. I think his stock will rise, and it looks good for Steve Alford. It'll help his recruitment that at least 2 and likely 3 of his guys could go in the first round.
I thought Rodney Hood was interesting. I mean, blue chip player who's at one of the premier programs. It depends on where you slot him, but if you put him as a 2 guard with his size and his ability to shoot the ball, his all-around game, he's very intriguing coming out of this, and that's before you even say hello and talk to him.
Because this back here doesn't really matter, I want to talk about measurements for a second, because I think Noah Vonleh measured so much better than Julius Randle. I think this is something that could help him in the draft process. And then Adrian Payne, not only did he have very similar measurements, in fact even a little bit better than Vonleh, but the fact that it came out now that he had mono, and he had mono since January, means that he had a 40-point game this season in the Big Ten where he was playing with mono. And I think you look at his numbers, as good as they were in the Big Ten, and you find out this guy's had mono for the last 3 months. They could have even been better. I think he's a guy who could continue to rise when you just factor in all the intangibles that are there, could continue to rise.
And that's really the exciting thing about the top of this draft. Just think back a year ago. Hey, should Alex Len go ahead of Zeller? I mean, that's not what we're doing this year, and it's not a knock on those guys. It's just when you look at this group of the top 10 players, and predictably so, they got beat up for months. But if you really kind of look back on it now and say, okay, what do you have to work with here from a projection standpoint? There's a lot to get excited about. And I still think, Chad, Joel Embiid is somebody that can change this whole thing depending on how teams feel about his medicals with that back.
We're never going to know, because Arn Tellem's going to give physicals to a couple of teams. They're not going to release that. We're not going to know, which puts us in a tough position, and it puts teams that don't get those physicals in a tough position. But it could be very beneficial for whoever Arn Tellem thinks Joel Embiid should play for.
And then tomorrow we're going to talk about Dario Saric, who's not here, Yusef Nurkic, who's not here, who could be in the lottery pick. Don't forget Kristaps Porzingis. Okay, got to get the international guys in tomorrow, at least some love before June.
Right? That was just very impressive. I just want to clip off that.
Every time I say those names right, I get another trip to Italy.
Keep going. Right?
Hey, we're going to see some Exum video. We're going to see some Exum video tomorrow. Hopefully, he's going to be out there doing those athletic testing. And I think for much of America, that's going to be the first chance to actually see this kid in action.
And really, the best part about tomorrow's show, day 2, is we see more of the drills. There's going to be all that feedback in the 24 hours. Every decision maker from the NBA here in Chicago. All the Buzz are going to update you on all of those stories coming up tomorrow. For Chad Ford, Tom Penn, Fran Fraschilla, Andy Katz, Jay Williams, Ryan Russillo. Coming up next, Sports Nation, presented by Toyota. And here is the scene inside Quest Multisport in Chicago. The players getting ready. Their first day in front of every general manager, a lot of head coaches as well. Not many took part in the drills, but everyone tested out. The team interviews continue this morning and throughout the night. And we will know more about the developments in what is one of the deepest drafts that we have seen in many years. That'll do it from us from Chicago. We'll see you day 2 tomorrow on ESPNU.